Brother John Horton will exhort us this morning, and it's about rebuke. So, none of us like to be rebuked, but it can be healthy. And I'm sure John will give us an uplifting talk on this matter. But he's asked that we turn to 2 Samuel 16 and read from that. And there's a lot of names in here that are somewhat challenging, so just bear with me as I read this. 2 Samuel 16. And when David was a little past the top of the hill, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of asses saddled, and upon the 200 loaves of bread, and 100 bunches of raisins, and 100 summer fruits, and a bottle of wine. And the king said unto Ziba, What meanest thou by these? And Ziba said, The asses be for the king's household to ride on, and the bread and the summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine that such as be faint in the wilderness may drink. And the king said, And where is the master's son? And Ziba said unto the king, Behold, he abideth at Jerusalem, for he said, Today shall the house of Israel restore me the kingdom of my father. Then said the king of Ziba, Behold, thine are all thy pertain unto Mephibosheth. And Ziba said, I humbly beseech thee that I may find grace in thy sight, my lord, O king. And when King David came to Barim, behold, thence came out a man of the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Jerah. He came forth and cursed still as he came. And he cast stones at David, and at all the servants and kings of David, and the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. And thus said Shimei, when he cursed, come out, thou bloody man, and thou man of Belial. The Lord hath returned upon thee all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose stead thou hast reigned. And the Lord hath delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom thy son. And behold, thou art taken in thy mischief, because thou art a bloody man. Then said Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, unto the king, Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over, I pray thee, and take off his head. And the king said, What shall I do with you, ye son of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the Lord hath said unto him, Curse David. Who shall then say, Wherefore hast thou done so? And David said to Abishai and to all his servants, Behold, my son, which came forth out of my bowels, seeketh my life. How much more now may this Benjamite do it? Leave him alone, and let him curse, for the Lord hath bidden him. And it may be that the Lord will look on my affliction, and that the Lord will requite me good of his cursing this day. And as David and his men went on by the way, Shimei went along on the hillside over against him, and cursed as he went, and threw stones at him, and cast dust. And the king and all the people that were with him came weary and refreshed themselves there. And Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with him. And it came to pass when Hushai and Archite, David's friend, was come into Absalom, that Hushai and Absalom, God save the king, God save the king. And Absalom said to Hushai, Is this thy kindness to thy friend, which winnest thou not with thy friend? And Hushai said unto Absalom, No, but whom the Lord and his people and all the men of Israel choose his will be, and with him I will abide. And again, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son, as I have served in thy father's presence? So will I be in thy presence. Then said Absalom to Ahithophel, Give counsel among you what we shall do. And Ahithophel said unto Absalom, Go into thy father's concubines, which he hath left to keep the house, and all Israel shall hear that thou art abhorred of thy father. Then shall the hand of all that are with thee be strong. So they spread Absalom a tent upon the top of the house, and Absalom went into unto his father's concubine in the sight of Israel. And the counsel of Ahithophel, which he counseled in those days, was as a man had inquired at an oracle of God, so was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. So it will now turn it over to our brother John with the title of Rebuke.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to attempt to share my screen here. Great. Can everyone see this and hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, again, good morning to everyone. I certainly want to echo Robert's words about our dear sister Sandra. She was certainly a living exhortation to all of us. Anyone that knew her knew that she was the definition of grace and poise and beauty and perseverance, and anyone who knew her was better for that. So we certainly hope and pray that her sleep will be a short one, and what a wonderful, inspiring woman to have had in our presence. Our topic today, as Robert mentioned, is rebuke, and it's kind of I guess, kind of a funny topic to pick. As Robert said right from the get-go, nobody likes rebuke. I certainly don't. And if you're anything like me, I'm sure you don't either. But this really, I guess, was born out of our brother Brad's talk last week, because he asked a very provocative question of us all, by stating, if this is true, what then? If our faith is something that we're going to sink our efforts into, what does that require of us? What are our expectations of ourselves, of each other? What does the Lord expect of us? And read this chapter this week about David, and this idea that this man who never, even though he sinned grievously, which is a lesson to all of us, that none of us are beyond losing our bearings, because certainly the Lord's anointed, this man who retained the title of a man after God's own heart, um, required great rebuke. And here we see a situation um, where these words are made very plain. Those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. So be earnest and repent. The Lord has stated that this is going to be part of our walk and part of our journey. And it's something that is a tool. And it may come from some of the most unexpected places. In our story that we read today, in the second book of Samuel, chapter 16, this is an artist's rendering of what was going on. Here to the left of the screen, we see Shimei represented as this raging man, screaming at the Lord's anointed. And here we have David with his mighty men with him. You may or may not like this rendering. It's certainly a very old artist rendering, but nonetheless, it conveys what was going on at the moment. How accurately, we're not sure, obviously, but David was having a rough time. I I chose this image because this is the closest I could come to an image of people piling on. And piling on is a term that we often hear uh, when we hear people being chastised. Eventually, it can get to a point where it appears that everybody is just piling on and throwing some sort of comment and some sort of aspersion in the way of whoever is being criticized. And I thought that David was obviously, as we go through this chapter, he's having a really rough time. He has this man as he is fleeing, and we haven't really um, got into this part of it yet, but he is fleeing because his son Absalom, is usurping him. He is usurping the Lord's anointed, and he is taking or thinking that he is taking the crown to himself and the sovereignty of the nation to himself. And he's doing this forcefully. And David, who has always been a man of action, was told after his grievous sin with Uriah and with Bathsheba that the sword was not going to leave his family, that there was going to be this type of unrest throughout the rest of his days. There was going to be this type of upheaval and intrigue and piling on, if you will. And this is exactly what he was experiencing. He was leaving, he was fleeing his son. And again, David, who had always been a man of action in his younger days, was not at all decisive when it came to his own children. He was not at all, with perhaps the exception of Solomon, he was not able to separate, I guess, family from the Lord's will very, very readily. A situation that should have been quelled. Certainly, he had the ability to do it. He chose to flee instead. And as he was fleeing, we find that he is set upon by this man, by Shimei. And in Shimei's example, what we see is somebody that has, I guess, years and years and years of built up festering hurt and ill will towards King David, because goes on to call him a bloody man, and he references the blood against the house of Saul. He was a relative of Saul himself, and he obviously felt that even though David was the Lord's anointed, that the house of Saul should have continued, not David. And he was at this point completely convinced that David was on his way out, that the crown had been transferred to Absalom. So he was, in fact, breaking the law. And it's cited here in Exodus 22, verse 28. It says, "Do not blaspheme God or curse the ruler of your people." Both of those are completely forbidden under the law. And yet, Shimei felt absolutely justified in what he was doing. And he was an enraged man. He was throwing stones, if you can believe it, at the Lord's anointed, cursing him, which he is told here strictly he should not do, cursing the Lord's anointed, saying that The throne was departing from him because of what he deemed was ill treatment of the house of Saul. So David had been on the throne at least 20 years at this point, at least halfway into his reign. So this man must have had years and years and years of this pent up, misguided rage towards David. And David certainly would have been justified. It's stated here under the law that he was breaking the Lord's commandments by cursing him. And his mighty men were more than capable. In fact, David was more than capable of extinguishing this man. But he chooses something very different. And as we read, we see that he says, look, this may actually be something that the Lord wants me to hear. This may be something that he knew it not to be true. He knew that he did not usurp the throne from the house of Saul. It was given to him by the Lord. He knew that he was the rightful king. And he decides to show a great deal of restraint and a great deal of, I guess, maturity. And this is something that we can learn from. We see in Proverbs, and a lot of the words here are going to be Solomon's words. And I've tried to, our brother Brad told me a few years ago that I used too many slides with just print. And I've tried to add a little more to it, some other slides as well. So hopefully this won't completely bore anybody. But a lot of these words are going to be Solomon's words because Solomon, as we know, is the wisest man who has ever drawn breath next to Christ. And his words are so relevant to us even today. And Solomon, in fact, is tied into this story because later on, Shimei, as fate would have it, when Absalom is killed, and he realizes that David is in fact going to remain the king, he throws himself in front of David and pleads for mercy. And David extends that mercy, which he certainly did not have to. And he in turn turns him over to his son at the end of his reign and says, Solomon, you are wise. The Lord has given you this wisdom. You deal with him as you see fit. Well, Solomon also extended mercy to this man. And he said, look, I want you to build a home here in Jerusalem, and this will be a place of refuge for you. But you're not to leave the city. You're not to go anywhere. You will be safe as long as you're here. But the moment you leave, that day you will die. And Shimei agreed to this. He said it was a good thing, and he did that. But after about 3 years, I guess he got somewhat complacent because two of his slaves left. They escaped, and they left Jerusalem. And he decided to go after them to get them back. And in doing so, he sealed his fate. And Benaiah was given the instruction to actually kill Shimei at that point because he had broken his vow. But again, here are these words, and these are the words of Solomon, and it is in stark contrast to the world that we live in today. Just think about social media when you look at these first few verses. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring. Let someone else praise you, not your own mouth, an outsider, and not your own lips. That is the polar opposite of the world that we live in. Stone is heavy and sand a burden, but fool's provocation is heavier than both. Anger is cruel and fury overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy? Better is open rebuke than hidden love. So again, Solomon is extending this wisdom that the world really has it backwards. We want to be elevated. We want to be acknowledged, and quite often, um, in our efforts to do so, we can be criticized. And if we take that criticism as a fool, um, this is the type of things that we can expect. But he goes on to say that better is open rebuke than hidden love. I want to share a story. As many of you know, I've had a bit of an adventure as far as my medical history since moving down here, and I've been well looked after many times. But at one of my fairly recent stays in the hospital, as they always do, they give you discharge summaries when you leave, and the nurse comes in, and whoever has been tasked with that will go over your charts and tell you sort of a summary of your visit, what to do going forward, and what to expect, et cetera, et cetera. Well, like you said, fairly recently, when I was discharged, a nurse came in who I had not seen before. It was the first time I'd met her. And she was roughly a foot shorter than me. And she probably outweighed me by maybe 80 pounds. And she went through my chart, and then she got to the BMI index, which is the body mass index, and she got very serious, and she looked at me, not dismissively, but seriously, and said, you know that if you're going to be healthy going forward, you're really going to need to lose some weight. And at that moment, um, I really wanted to disregard what she was telling me. Um, but then I thought about it. I went home and I thought about it, and I thought, well, just because she was tasked with doing that job, it doesn't change the message. It doesn't change what the medical community is telling me, the people that have just looked after me, that it wouldn't be a bad idea to get to a more healthy weight, even though I really didn't feel like I needed to, but I took it to heart, and it really had nothing to do with the messenger. And I think this is something that in all of this idea of rebuke and this idea of us walking and making our way through our walks to the kingdom, the Lord has given us each other. In some cases, he's given us spouses, he's given us parents, he's given us children, um, he's given us strangers, even sometimes. And he's given us all of these points of interaction. And many times we can be very, at least I can, be very dismissive about some of the feedback that we're getting if we feel that perhaps the messenger is someone who's too familiar, flawed themselves, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't change the message. And I really think this was an opportunity reading this about David to put on another set of glasses and look at my life and my walk and realize that the Lord's given me so much and so many to help me navigate this. And quite often I tune out what I should not be. Again, the words of Solomon, do not, I'm sorry, I went back the wrong way, excuse me. In Proverbs chapter 9, whoever corrects a mocker invites insults. Whoever rebukes the wicked incurs abuse. Do not rebuke mockers, or they will hate you. Rebuke the wise, and they will love you. What a contrast that is. And what maturity that takes to actually be wise and to try to listen to the message and not necessarily who is delivering it. Instruct the wise, and they will be wiser still. Teach the righteous, and they will add to their learning. And that's certainly easily said and not so easy to do. Um, I've said this many times to my family and to others, but certainly in the working world, we can see examples of people who either fortunately or unfortunately have not had the experience of being coached um, because they're almost uncoachable. We know people that do not play well with others in the work world because any sort of guidance, any sort of redirection, any sort of um, steering by those who we are reportable and accountable to is taken as an assault. It's taken as an affront. It's taken as being disrespected. Um, but having the opportunity to be coached as a child teaches us that this is direction. This is we are part of a team, and indeed we are part of a body, um, and we are all accountable to each other. And there is place for individual achievement within that framework, and there are times to step back so that others can take the fore, and there are times to work together and pull together, and there there's so much to be done and in this wonderful concept of this idea of team. And I think it's very apparent anyone who is in the working world um, that those who haven't had the opportunity to be coached as a child just do not play well with others. And unfortunately, they view any sort of oversight or guidance, or much less rebuke. It may not be rebuke at all. It may be just, you know, channeling and steering, uh, but it is not taken well. And again, these words in Ecclesiastes, it is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the song of fools. And if we think about that, we would much rather hear praise. We'd much rather hear um, things that we deem to be positive and uplifting, even if they're not necessarily true. It just feels better to us. But it's made very clear that the rebuke, um, done in a loving way of a wise person, is much, much better. We, I saw this graphic a few years ago, and I thought it was appropriate. And I wonder, have we ever been this person? You see this picture of teamwork represented by everybody holding up their end, and then we have one person that is not on board, and they're walking away. And I asked myself, have I been this person? And I'm sure I have, whether it be in my ecclesia or in my family or even in my marriage. Um, but these are all places that the Lord has given us to hone our skill as a member of the team, as a member of the body, as someone who is there to uplift and encourage and support each other. And I thought, while my words have been very, very, very simple today, I wanted in some way to bring this back to our reason for being together, even though it is online, and that is the table that we're about to partake of. And I thought these words were very, very appropriate to end with. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you live by the Spirit. You who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. How? Do it gently. But watch yourselves, or you may also be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this you will find a way. You will fulfill the law of Christ. Thank you.